was.
We're live.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Good evening.
Welcome to Live at 5 with James and James.
And hope you're having a great Sunday evening after coming out and visiting Orange.
It's been a fantastic week. We've had about 90 mils of precipitation in the last 7 days. Some of that's fallen as snow, sleet, hail, rain. Today we went from about 0.3 degrees up to 3.9 degrees. So if you're feeling cold in Orange, you're right.
You're right.
So I'm sitting here with a bit of mild Zinfandel. We're going to be talking about middling racks, are we?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we mentioned last week that we would have a look at the method champenois process, and hopefully some of you have kept in contact with us through the week. We did 3 posts, 3 different steps on our Instagram, just to give you a bit of a prelude into the world of naturally carbonated products. So I think it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm pretty sure they were.
It was brilliant.
Yeah.
I sat and watched them.
Fantastic.
I knew most of it. There was a beautiful young English lass speaking on one of them.
Yes.
I said, where's she come from?
Well, I have to admit that is an old take. That was my wife, Gail.
Still the same information.
Still
so it
the
was
same
completely up to date.
And to everybody listening, Gail is not back in Australia. She's still in the UK. So.
Before we jump in, big shout out to Katie last week. Thank you for jumping in and talking about ein Schwein sausage. It was fantastic. Really good team player. Had a lot of fun. I hope you're sitting at home with your friends and a bottle of wine and a bottle of cider and watching us tonight and saying, wish we were here.
Yeah. Thanks, Katie.
Yep. Barry, who's up on the Central Coast, watches us every week. And he got a box of wine. Hopefully it's delivered by now. He got a box of wine last week. And Lisa, who's local, she'll be watching us, and quite a few others. So if I've forgotten your names, keep watching, keep sending comments to us, and away we go.
Yeah, it's nice to hear from Barry.
Yeah.
I see Barry around a little bit, around festivals.
He's
and
good.
things.
He's good. He's missing his festivals.
A great, of course, a great Orange supporter as well. So good stuff. Okay, so the thing that I find most fascinating about, let's call it the sparkling wine process, because the French get a little bit titchy, is that a word?
Yeah. Up themselves.
About all of us non-French people using the word method champenois. But essentially, it's the same process that we use to make our naturally carbonated ciders. Exactly the same process. But yeah, good on the French for quarantining those words. But the process is the same. So we essentially start with a first fermentation in a vat or a barrel. So the start of the process is very similar to the start of the process of making wine. But once we've done a first fermentation, we then put the product into a champagne or sparkling wine bottle. And sparkling wine bottles are fit for purpose because they are quite a heavier bottle, certainly a stronger bottle, and they need to be because the second part of the process is a second fermentation actually happens inside the bottle. So each individual bottle in essence becomes its own little vat. And the fermentation process happens in the bottle. Two things happen during fermentation. The yeasts consume the natural sugars and they convert those into alcohol. That's where alcohol comes from. And a byproduct of that whole process is also the creation of natural carbon dioxide.
Yeast farts.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yes. Good old Australian, bring it down to the
So the bottle has to hold 8 atmospheres.
Yes.
So it has to be strong, and
Absolutely.
there'd be lots of the ladies are a lot smarter, so there'd be lots of guys out there that have done home brew, have done ginger beer. The middle of the night, the middle of the afternoon, there's an explosion in the cellar.
Exactly.
So they've had too much sugar, but they're also in a sort of a stock standard bottle.
Correct.
So yeah, bottles for home brewing and for making ginger beer. If you did it in a sparkling one, you'd either have a humongous explosion or it won't explode. Because 8 atmospheres, so that's
No, that's a fair bit of pressure.
that's a lot of pressure.
Fair bit of pressure. And you know, you're right, James. There is a lot of science behind what you're doing. It's not just a matter of, you know, chucking it in the bottle and doing a secondary fermentation. You really do need to calculate how much natural sugar, or if you're using sugar for the secondary fermentation, how much that will convert to in terms of atmospheric pressure. What sort of atmospheric pressure your bottle will withstand, because there are different bottles with different abilities to withstand different atmospheric pressures. So you really need to do your maths to make sure that you don't have exploding bottles. So
Otherwise, it's a disaster.
Absolutely. And then you know what I find really interesting now, because we've done a secondary fermentation, for example, in this bottle, and we've got naturally carbon dioxide produced, but we've also got spent yeast, or yeast cells that have done their job. They've created more alcohol. They've created natural carbon dioxide. Essentially, they run out of food. You know, they eat themselves to death. Once that happens, they sort of settle out and form a kind of a sediment on the bottom of the bottle, which is kind of a bit murky and doesn't look great when you see the sediment swirling around in the bottom of the bottle. So we have to get that out of the bottle, the spent yeast, or what winemakers call lees. We need to remove the lees, and this is where the quite manual, complicated process happens from here on in. And our step 1 on our little videos through the week was a process called riddling. And riddling is the start of the process of removing the lees from the bottle after the secondary fermentation has happened. So there's a few different ways. For example, we use a slightly different way to what we've got set up here, but let's have a look at this process. This is called a riddling rack, and even from France, is it all?
Oh, this is a very old one. I bought a large amount many years ago out of the Seppelfields winery in South Australia.
Right.
This happens to be French oak, and the table I had made is Jarrah. And from the woodworking point of view, they are magnificent. The holes are drilled on an angle.
Yes.
This is probably 160 years old now, this piece of timber. Drilled on an angle, they're all even. If you've been to the caves in France, in Epernay, in Champagne, downstairs, layers and layers and layers of them. In this day and age, we use them for beauty. But yeah, wow.
Yeah, because you can mechanically sort of riddle these days, but let's go back to the romance of hand riddling. Now, James pointed out a very important point. These holes are a specific shape. They are on a specific angle, and they also, if you notice, they've got this little cutout piece here, all for a purpose. Okay, so let's, for example, we'll take this bottle. It's just finished secondary fermentation. The reason why we've got a crown seal is because that's what keeps the carbonation in the bottle, doesn't allow it to escape, and we need to start riddling. So this little cutout piece here is actually where you hook in your bottle to start, because you want your bottle actually on quite a horizontal, a horizontal or a flat, just to start with. It's got to be nearly horizontal. Now, what happens then is all the sediment starts to kind of filter down and rest on the lower part of the bottle. And over a period of time, you actually do a quarter turn and you gradually push the bottle in. And then the next day or next week you come, do a quarter turn and gradually push the bottle in. Now, hopefully you can see what's happening here. The angle of the bottle is starting to go like that. And over, depending on the producer, but over anywhere between 3 or 4 months to even sometimes years, they allow the wine or the cider to actually rest on the lees. And we'll come back to that to talk about that.
And this rack is set up for demonstration purposes in the corner. It should be out a bit more, so at the end of your riddling, the bottle ends up in a vertical position. But this is here for the video.
Yeah. So this is fast forward. It doesn't happen in 5 minutes. This is fast forward. So, you keep quarter turning, keep pushing in, keep quarter turning, and then it gradually, when you get toward the end, and as James said, this would be on a steeper slope, so the bottle would actually be nearly upright. Actually, so
you've got the clear bottle here,
yes,
which you could use as a demo.
Absolutely, that's why I brought it along. Now we've got to use our imagination here, because you can see, or hopefully, I'll explain this and I'll stand up and go closer. So you will see some rice grains in there. Now, we are not producing sake, okay?
I wouldn't have mentioned it. The good people work together in this district, and we just couldn't get a demo bottle.
Couldn't get a demo bottle. So, yes, we don't use rice, okay? This is just purely demonstration. They represent the lees. So, remember when I said when we started, the bottle is nearly horizontal. So, maybe if I can get up, and hopefully this will work. So, can you see?
And against your red shirt.
A bit lower, yeah? So, as I was explaining before, just imagine my hand is the riddling rack. So you quarter turn and you push in. You quarter turn and you push in. Can you see what's happening? Quarter turn, push in. Quarter turn, push in. You can see all the make-believe leaves is starting to move down into the neck of the bottle. Quarter turn, push in. Quarter turn, push in, and eventually the bottle is upright in the rack, and all the lees is in the neck of the bottle. Okay, did everyone?
Yeah.
Is that all right? Yeah.
You've done really well.
Okay.
That's the old teacher in you. Yeah,
So, big deal, James. Now we've got all the lees in the neck.
Yep.
So what happens next?
It's like Professor Sumner Miller. How do we get the lees out of the milk bottle?
Out of the milk. Okay. So the next step in the process, once you're riddling, and this is, again...
Ages.
It's not done in the 2 seconds that I just showed you. So we've got a beautifully clear cider or wine. We've got the lees in the neck. So what happens next? Next step is we have to freeze the neck of the bottle. And you might have heard that term, neck freezing, which sounds a little bit painful, but you're not freezing your own neck. You're freezing the neck of the bottle. So essentially what you do is, there are machines to do this, but at the basic form, what they are is a tub that is filled with glycol.
Yeah. Okay,
with a refrigeration unit on it. And you get the glycol down to a temperature of minus 25 degrees Celsius.
Freezing. Freezing.
You then take each bottle from your rack, which is now pretty much upright and all the lees are in the neck, and you dip the neck of the bottle into the glycol up as far as the lees go in the neck.
And it usually wouldn't be that much.
It wouldn't be
leaves.
that much.
It's just
a
couple of centimetres and it makes a plug.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guess what? Guess what happens when you put the neck of the bottle into minus 25 degrees Celsius?
That section freezes solid, but
yes.
the top section stays liquid.
Correct. Yes. So you form a kind of a frozen block of either wine or cider, and what's frozen within that block is all the lees. Once you've got your little frozen block of cider in the neck of your bottle, you can actually turn your bottle upright. The sediment stays frozen in the little block in the neck, and if you then take your cap off, remembering that this is under pressure, guess what happens?
Out it goes.
The frozen block with all the sediment or the lees comes out the top of the bottle. And you are left with a nice clear, either wine or cider, carbonated, naturally carbonated. No more lees because you've popped it out the top. And then you can put another closure on the bottle and you're good to go.
Now, Roderick Rouseabout had a really good question.
Why
doesn't it explode like you see the guys in the Grand Prix?
Yes. Okay, number of reasons. When you're transferring from your rack to your neck freezer, you're not shaking it up like this.
Like a Formula One driver.
You're not shaking it up like a Formula One driver and spraying it everywhere. So that's the first reason. It's a calm process. The second reason is we've done the science to ensure that in the secondary fermentation process, everything's spent. All the sugar's been consumed. The lees are now spent and have died, form the sediment. And the calculation is such that you shouldn't get this massive gush. So that's the second reason. Third reason is before we even do that process of neck freezing, we need to get each bottle down to around 0 degrees or slightly even below 0 degrees, okay? And that helps to actually really reduce the bubble size and kind of retain the bubble in the liquid. And if you don't do that, then you are going to run into gushing bottles. But you've got to get the bottle and the liquid down to that nearly 0 degrees before you do the disgorging process.
And because it's alcohol in there, you get it down to 0.
Correct.
The liquid's not going to freeze yet, and it's under pressure, so it's not going to freeze.
Correct.
The other thing is the angle. I'll just get our yeast lees back down. The angle you hold it. If you hold it like that, vertically, you've got a very tight neck, and as the bubbles come out, it's got a tunnel to push out. If you have it on an angle, you've just tripled your surface area for the gas to come out. So now, what's with the sword?
The sword. Well, sabering.
And I'll just riddle this quickly. I think you've done a brilliant job there.
So the sabering, historically it used to be done, and my understanding is it was actually done before refrigeration technology was invented. And even though they kind of worked out if they got all the lees in the neck of the bottle, they had to disgorge without doing all of the neck freezing process.
Because they didn't have it back
They didn't have it
in the 15th century.
So that was more a kind of an action action of making sure your bottle's there, and then as you bring it up, you're knocking off the top. So that the same thing happens, because it's still under pressure, everything gets spurted out. But using that approach, you do end up losing quite a lot of liquid.
So that was in the way old days.
Yeah. And it was, it was a coordinated approach of going like this and about there going like that, so that everything got blown out the top, and you kind of probably lost about this much, but you still had.
And every time I took the cap off a long neck, I seemed to break the top of the bottle off.
And that happened quite often, yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, really interesting. But why do we do it? Why do we do it? Because it is a long, laborious, manual approach.
So how long for one of your products?
So something like the cat's pajamas, from start to finish, that can take us anywhere between 3 and 3.5 years. Because there is it's a balance again. It's a balance of actually how long do you leave the product resting on the lees before you do the whole disgorging process. And that's really about creating that, often described as biscuity or brioche type character.
Yeasty,
that you find in champagne.
Fresh bread.
Fresh bread, that sort of thing. And it's called autolysis, and it's but basically it's how long you rest the wine or the cider on the lees. The longer you do that, the more of the brioche fresh bread sort of character that you end up creating.
And so you need 3 or 4 years. You need some vision. It's a lot more expensive. It's 3 or 4 more years of labour.
Yep.
It's more storage. You need more space to store it.
Yep.
You've got a bigger, heavier, more expensive bottle. And then more labour with the riddling and so on. And that's why a good method champenoise or sparkling wine, as we have to call it these days, is more expensive.
Absolutely.
But there's so much more complexity and deliciousness.
Yes.
You pour that in the glass and you can taste the effort that's gone in there. And it makes it heaven.
And that's exactly why we do it. Not only for that reason, but also the bubble is very different compared to something that's been force carbonated, like a soft drink, for example. So a soft drink doesn't go through all of this process. Essentially, when they're bottling, they're kind of squirting in carbon dioxide, like imagine a massive commercial soda stream operation. But doing it that way compared to doing it this way, you create a very different bubble. So an artificial or a force carbonated product, it's like a soft drink experience. It's a big coarse explosion of bubble that's quite coarse and short on the palate. Whereas doing a naturally carbonated product and doing all this work, you create a very different size bubble. It's a much smaller bubble. It's a much more consistent bubble, which is why
beads going up through the glass.
When you see a champagne being poured into a champagne glass, you will see that continuous line of bubble coming up through the champagne, and that smaller, more continuous bubble gives you a very different experience on the palate. It's more like a mousse on the palate. It's a much more kind of pleasant
textual,
creamier kind of experience rather than the coarseness of an artificially carbonated product. So that's why we do it.
Good.
That's why we do it.
I think that has been hugely informative. Have we got any questions or feedback happening out there in television land? None yet? No,
None yet.
Everyone's just taken it all in. I think you can book in for the Small Acres sparkling course shortly online, and James can take you
See
through
how
it.
small those bubbles are?
Now,
And that continuous bubble, that's what it's all about.
I learned quite a lot about sparkling glasses. These are a beautiful Spiegelau tulip. We're also used to the lovely flutes, but the Marie Antoinette, do you know the story with that? Yes, it was formed to match her bosom, and it's an old style sparkling glass, but it's got a large surface area, so it's going to go flat quicker. The amazing thing, and we see, and you won't be out there in television land, you won't be able to see the bead of bubbles coming up. But often children and young adults look at it and wonder, is the glass leaking? How's that happening? What it is, and they make this specifically, there are little imperfections in these beautiful crystal glasses that allow the nucleus of the bubble to form, and it will keep coming from there. So there is a whole lot of science in beautiful sparkling glasses. So I love the tall flutes. They're disastrous to wash up. These we use in the cellar door, which are beautiful but are also disastrously dangerous. They love to fall over and break. But yeah, it's good, and you can just sit there and watch that bead going up and up and up.
So we do a number of products using that process. One of which was the cat's pajamas, which we spoke about last week. And the other which we're drinking now is our 2016 sparkling. Both products method, let's call it...
Method champ. By law, we're allowed to call it method traditional or method champenoise. We're not allowed to call it champagne.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd made a method champenoise sparkling Zinfandel many years ago, and I did all the research to do it correctly. So you're at a method traditional or method champenoise.
Okay, excellent. I do have method traditional on the bottle, on the label, because I knew you could use method traditional. But as I said, both those products, method traditional, and we're drinking the sparkling 2016.
Well, that's good. Cheers to that.
Cheers
Well
to
done.
that. Yeah.
Well done.
What else have we got? Are we going to finish up, or just...
Yeah, no, we could keep chatting. You should have some sausage. I've been sitting here nibbling sausage. Now, last week, when we were here with Katie and we were trying the truffle sausage, I went down to the riddling rack in the cellar door and pulled out, it was a 2006 Cabernet Merlot. It had a screw cap, we had a glass, it was fantastic. I sat it away, forgot about it. I had it on Friday night. Oh my God, wow! And
awesome.
If we were in front of it, it's a Cabernet Merlot with a little bit of Cab Franc, so a Bordeaux blend. If we were in Bordeaux, they would have sold it for €300. So hopefully there are some guys and girls out there that have bought wines over the years and sat them down. It was sensational. I have a weird and wonderful collection of old wines in the racks downstairs. So if you're visiting, it's worth having a sticky beak and digging through. It surprised me. I'd sort of forgotten it in the cellar door. We'd left here on Sunday night and grabbed it on Friday night. I thought, well, I'll give this a try, and it was heaven.
Excellent.
It was heaven.
So you've got a few bottles here for sale?
Yeah, a few.
At cellar door?
Yep, at cellar door. It's too hard to keep track on the website, so I've just got boxes here and put them in the rack, and
cool.
So it's good.
Excellent.
It's good.
Well,
So
maybe we have a look at that next week.
I'll dig out some old
Some
stuff.
old stuff. Let's have a look at some old stuff.
Okay. Yeah. He'd like to try some €300 wine. Yeah, no, we'll do that. It's a good experience, and very happy with that. So, and your cellar door this week's been busy.
Yeah, sure has been great.
Yeah,
it's been good.
We've had a terrific week.
Just a reminder for people to book ahead.
Yep.
I hate disappointing people, and when somebody takes the time to come and see us at cellar door and we can't fit them in, it's everybody understands, but still I just don't like disappointing people.
We're all continuing to be COVID safe. We've got limited seating arrangements in every different building, in James's place, my place, all the other cellar doors and restaurants. Now, I spoke to Chris Smith on 2GB this morning, sort of wearing my Food Week hat and a bit of a chit chat around Orange. Continue to praise all the travellers, Sydney, New South Wales, that are coming to regional Australia, particularly Orange, but they're going everywhere. They're going everywhere, and the restaurants are busy, the cellar doors are busy, walking around Lake Canobolas, Mount Canobolas, everywhere's busy. So plan ahead, and come on out. We're loving your support. It's fantastic.
Just book ahead.
So now the Father's Day packs we
Excellent.
advertised last week.
Yes.
We've sold one already, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Father's Day is coming.
Not far
Don't
away.
leave it too late.
Yeah. So yeah, just a reminder to get your Father's Day pack, which was a cat's pajamas, Zinfandel, and also a
Cargo Road
Road
Zinfandel Cacciatore or Saucisson.
yeah.
So, and that's, I've been sitting here nibbling on all three of the sausages we've got in the house. Fantastic.
Cool.
And anything you want to order online, put a mixed box together, cider, wine, all cider, all wine, we're here. We're here to help you. If you're in lockdown in Victoria, we'll do you a deal. We want to help you down there. We're thinking of you guys. You're doing the hard yards for the rest of Australia. Brilliant.
But just get in contact with us. Phone, email,
phone call away.
phone, email, DM.
And send us some feedback. Again, anything you want to hear or learn, any wines you want us to try, any ciders you want us to try. If you twist our arm, we might get some Pioneer back and we'll try that.
Righto, good stuff. That was enjoyable talking about the method traditionnel. That's a bit of my passion. So yeah, it was good stuff. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, I've had an enjoyable time, and hats off to the demo bottle. Brilliant, very clever.
All right, guys, have a good week, and keep an eye on our socials. We'll update you on what's happening next week, but I'll twist James's arm and get some of the old stuff out for us to have a look at. But great. Good night from me, James.
It's a good night from me, James.
Cheers.